The former island of Formosa, now known as Taiwan, is an island about 36,193 square kilometers and it has a population around 23 million people. Taiwan's very famous for their semiconductors, microchips that powers many of today's electronics. In fact, most of today's electronics market is supplied with microchips from Taiwanese companies such as TSMC. Despite its relevance, Taiwan is not recognized as a country by most nations in our contemporary world. It is considered as a region primarily controlled by the People's Republic of China. In this video, I'll be talking about the relationship between China and Taiwan after COVID-19. China was a very poor country in the beginning of the 1900s. Over half of the population was starving and jobless. A civil war started, and after that civil war ended, China was split into two factions, the nationalist Kuomintang and the Communist Party. The Communist Alliance won and overtook in the year of 1949. The leader of that movement was Mao Zedong. The Kuomintang fled to the island of Taiwan and established control of that island. However, there was no territorial sovereignty, meaning that the KMT were assigned to governing Taiwan under the CCP. However, both citizens and governors of the island were unsatisfied with being controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. It didn't take long to the Taiwanese people to establish their own alliance with other nations such as the United States. In 1965, China created the One China policy that fundamentally required countries to identify Taiwan as part of China. Most countries in the world did acknowledge Taiwan as being part of China. Otherwise, trade with China would not have been possible. This enforcement from China has been affected Taiwan drastically, since Taiwanese do not identify as Chinese and would like to be independent from China. Since Taiwan seeks its own identity as a democratic country, it pushes China away. However, China claims that Taiwan would not have been able to sustain itself as a full independent nation, since it has close ties with China. Companies such as Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, and Amazon relies on silicon semiconductors for their products, from companies from Taiwan such as TMC and Foxconn. In 2014, China and Taiwan decided to start a free trade agreement where it would tie both nations even more. This measure created many protests in Taiwan, named the Sunflower Movement. This nationalist movement reignited the passion for citizens in Taiwan from the country, and since then, Taiwan has deviated more and more from Beijing. Taiwanese leaders have also pushed a freedom agenda against the CCP, and of course, the CCP has retaliated with posts in Chinese social media against Taiwanese separatist movements. Taiwan has built itself a great reputation of dealing with COVID-19, with few deaths in comparison with other regions with a close number of population. Infection numbers were quite mild as well when compared to countries with a similar population. After the declarations from Taiwanese officials regarding a lack of transparency from the CCP when it comes to COVID-19 case number, even more segregation between the two nations came up. However, this year, Taiwan has opened its border and the Omicron variant of the coronavirus did not have its lasting effect as it was before. This helped them, both Taiwan and China, to straighten their relations during the first half of this year, since both regions could apply a more needed extensive trading partnership, not just between each other, but as well as other nations in Asia as well. Nonetheless, Taiwan was not satisfied with current policies that China took this year in order to countermeasure COVID-19. Firstly, the zero COVID policy was something that, according to a survey done by Brookings, most people don't think in Formosa that these measures were really possible or grounded to reality. 80% of people in 1,000 people surveyed in Taiwan also believe that it is China's responsibility to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on the whole of Asia. To make diplomatic relations even worse between China and Taiwan, according to Premier from Taiwan, Su Tseng-cheng, the lockdowns that the CCP imposed early this year have been cruel and a strategy to its people, implying that many of those who lived in the mainland would suffer financially from such measures. From the standpoint of Taiwanese citizens, it is no secret that the PRC wishes to persuade them with the side of Beijing and favor unification. Despite their growing hostility to the notion, Beijing attempted everything it could to portray itself as a constructive participant in the global epidemic, but it ultimately failed to win the hearts and minds in Taiwan. If the PRC wishes to persuade Taiwanese support to some sort of unification, it must first persuade them to its desirable partner. Then it would need to convince them that the mainland is neither hostile nor dangerous to Taiwan. Previous studies indicate that Beijing has a long way to go to attain that goal. If the People's Republic of China's leaders thought their success in controlling COVID-19 would move the needle on that front, they seem to have been mistaken.